On last week's episode, we turned the spotlight on Johannesburg's inner city rejuvenation, taking a stroll around Braamfontein with tour operating company Past Experiences.
I think there is a big influx of people. I think when we first started, I remember going to a trade show and people saying to us, but are you crazy? Joburg inner city walking tours. And maybe we were a little crazy, but I always say this is not my job, this is my life, and everything I have is put into the Joburg inner city. I love it. And so there have been more people. We get a lot of locals that we're lucky. We get a lot of locals, corporates, schools, international tourists. So it's a nice mix of people, and all of them are so open-minded about coming into the city, which is so great.
I think it's definitely becoming more accessible. There's a lot of new stuff that's coming up and a lot of things that attract younger crowds and even maybe older people actually.
I love that there's this regeneration in Braamfontein because we spent a lot of our younger years living in Braamfontein, and I love coming back and seeing it being such a vibey and dynamic place. It's wonderful.
Slowly but surely, I think with the gentrification of Mathang and Braamfontein in these areas, I have friends who studied here and they've always told me that Braamfontein was safe. But I can't say, having not grown up in this area, that I would have felt safe walking around alone, even on a Saturday like this. But the more you start seeing people from different backgrounds, and also the different restaurants and markets that are popping up, coffee shops, it just makes it more of a safe and habitable area.
With the aim of reversing the spatial injustices of the apartheid era, the Inner City Regeneration Program is rebuilding Johannesburg into an inclusive, safe, accessible place to live, work and play. The project is called the Corridors of Freedom and includes a 10-year transport master plan that is already underway. Citizens will soon be able to access any part of Johannesburg, including the inner city, with ease.
I've been part of this redevelopment for many years. We've come with a number of different programs just to rejuvenate the city. And we've worked with a number of stakeholders, including the SIDS, including Johannesburg Land Company, including key private sector that's in the inner city. And over time, we've formed forums, and in these forums with clear objectives of what is it that we want to achieve and the time that we want to achieve this.
Joburg is going through a very exciting time. When I just look at the list of accolades that we've received over the past 18 months, other than being the most visited city in Africa, that's according to the MasterCard Global Destination Cities Index, and we've been that now for 2 or 3 years running. We've been given a host of wonderful nominations and accolades and been named as most recently, the coolest city in the Southern Hemisphere by GQ in the UK. And then there have been others as well, like the second most inspiring city in the world after Hong Kong. So Joburg is really going through, I would say, a surge in terms of interest. Somehow all this inner city rejuvenation has kind of sparked off people's imaginations. And as we've seen, we've got our long-standing tourist attractions, but the things that are really getting people excited now is this regeneration downtown and all the new markets, lifestyle and destination markets, which are coming online as well.
Look at Newtown Precinct some few years ago. It was a difficult, terrible area. But through private sector, with the seats there, City of Johannesburg putting a seed, it's been huge turnaround. But the more exciting one is Braamfontein. Braamfontein 20 years ago was a bad, terrible area. It was a terrible area. Look at Braamfontein today. It's a marvel. It attracts people from all over. Business is thriving in Braamfontein because the city only put a seed funding of changing the landscape, putting street furnitures, lights, all those. And what it did, private sector responded positively.
Braamfontein, when we started doing this tour, because it doesn't have the history of the rest of the city, in a way there wasn't as much to point out, and there were no coffee shops to take our groups to, so we used to go to the Devonshire Hotel, which is a lovely hotel. It's a 3-star hotel, it's been here for years and years, but that was where we could go. Now there's all these cool hip little places. We always still like to support the original people we did in the early days anyway, but yeah, huge changes. And I went to Wits here, Wits University, which is just behind where we are now, and the changes are just so immense, and I think generally for the better. And we'll have to see in like another 10 years.
I always like to say to people that it's like a boom town that's never stopped booming. And the reasons for the boom might have changed. Like 130 years ago, it was the gold that got everyone excited and brought them here. And since then, things have evolved and become more sophisticated, and now it's a city of financial services and all sorts of other exciting leading industries and fashion and design and technology. So I think that's Joburg's sort of ultimate magnetic pull is people come here to do something that they can't do anywhere else in the country or the continent.
I have no doubt that when you look at Johannesburg today, 2016, you look at Johannesburg in 1996, it's chalk and cheese. People were afraid to come to Johannesburg. People would not buy property in Johannesburg. But for now, it's a scramble. People want to buy in Johannesburg. We still have huge challenges in the inner city. Huge challenges. But we're winning.
As the city of Johannesburg continues the rejuvenation process block by block, MMC Mathang says that Hillbrow is its next target.
First is getting the basics right. And what are the basics? Basics are things like when there are potholes, get the potholes right. Get the traffic lights to be working. Make sure that the streets are clean, the pavements are clean. And that's our starting point. The next point is really regularize people that have hijacked buildings. Because if we can address that, people that are in those squalor, difficult, terrible buildings, and we clean those buildings and there's ownership, the owner can actually account for the rates that are there, for the people that are there. For now, the rates are very difficult within some of those buildings. And so those are the baby steps that we're taking. But we're definitely going to get Hillbrow.
In the inner city, security measures such as better lighting, 24-hour traffic policing and CCTV have improved safety in the area.
We've actually increased more personnel of JMPD. Not so long ago, we had about 1,500 JMPD. Today, we're proud. We have 4,500 JMPD across City of Johannesburg. But a whole lot of those are actually concentrated in the inner city. And they do different types of work there. But more is around what I've said before, just getting those basics right. Quick response to issues around crime. People that are dumping, it's the work of the JMPD because there's a by-law enforcement there. People that are trading in areas that they should not be traded, just at the front of the door of the bank. Those type of things are issues that we're working very close. But more exciting also, government can do as much as it can. If private sector is not responding, we'll forever be in deep trouble. But the reverse has happened now, is that there's more drive by private sector towards getting the buildings rejuvenated. I mean, you've seen. One other thing that I think is important, if you look at Johannesburg before, Johannesburg was not meant for people to stay. That's one. Second, if those that stayed, it was a certain color that stayed. But over time, many people have come to Johannesburg. Many people have actually invaded office blocks. And you'll know that once you occupy an office block as a residential, is that building will actually be run down because there's not enough things like water supply, there's not enough toilets, and in that way, it's a problem. What private sector has done, they've bought lots of buildings there and converted those into residential. And if you convert the city into some blocks into residential, then you're keeping the city alive to a 24. Because before the city would just be a place to work and people go out to the suburbs wherever that they stay. But now you find the inner city. It's a place to work, to play, to do everything within the inner city. People don't have to travel to go out to find other services. All services are found in one place.
Johannesburg is positioned as an economic hub, attracting business people from across the world. The city also sees a healthy number of visitors who come here purely for leisure. However, when South Africa implemented strict new visa regulations, a Grant Thornton report found that Johannesburg lost 33,000 foreign tourists in 2014 due to these changes.
Undoubtedly, visitor numbers did drop, although during that time we were still voted the most visited city in Africa. And people also sort of should be reminded that at the same time as the visa regulations, the impact of them, there was also that huge Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And in many people's minds, Africa is one great big place. They don't realize that it's a massive continent with huge geographic distances between places. So that also did have an impact. But now that the visa regulations have been addressed, Chinese market, the Asian market is making a huge comeback very quickly, and hopefully that will continue to do so, and we will continue that growth that we were experiencing, which was way above the international average a few years ago prior to the dip.
Now that the visa regulations have been revised, there are signs of a turnaround. Data from the Ministry of Home Affairs indicates an increase of 130,000 foreign visitors to South Africa between the 1st of December 2015 and the 7th of January 2016. Joburg Tourism recently relocated to Sandton.
We're on the Nelson Mandela Square, and people are welcome to come to our offices for information, because we are set up as a visitor services bureau as well. We're opening our new visitor information centre in about 6 months' time, which is going to be on the square, so that's going to be fabulous and central for people. We also have an information centre at Park Station that's to mainly cater for our cross-border travellers who come in via train and bus. And then we have one on Walter Sisulu Square in Kliptown as well. So those are 3 of the major stop-off points. We also like to refer people to our website. And because through that we can link you up with fantastic guides, guidebooks, people who produce what's on information.